So hey, before this video starts, just a few quick things. Yes, I know that this video has taken a while for me to get out, judging by the time I actually created the project file, 2 months. Whoops, I'm really sorry for that. Range of things happened to delay the video, the latest of which is I've got sick, with the illness that's been in the news for the last 2 years. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to record the last bit of the commentary before I got sick, so if it sounds a little bit off, that's why. I'm mostly recovered, but I still have a cough, and that's kind of messing up my voice right now, as you might be able to hear. Second of all, this is going to be the first video I'm putting out in which I am advertising the fact that I am now an affiliate of a company over here called Gametee, who the people who run that I've been friends with for years, and I'm honoured that they have decided to choose me as one of their affiliates. So, you know, if you want to go support them and support me as well, go down into my description where there is my affiliate link and use the code PredictedCyborg, all in capital letters, all one word, to get 5% off your order. They do really good t-shirts, they do dice for D&D, they all do all kinds of tabletop gameplay stuff. Just go have a look. You'll find something there that you like, I guarantee it. Okay, so let's just get on with the video, shall we?
Good things take time. I've already said this before in a previous video, but for independent creators that holds doubly true. It happened with Bunny Farm, and now it's happening too with Season 2 of Harmony and Horror. We've only had 2 episodes of the next lot of videos involving the Greywinder family, but what we have had is well done and put together. And of course, in typical Battingham fashion, there's also the 3 unlisted videos hidden in the description, with yet another choice making up 2 of those 3. Right now, I think there's enough for me to delve into already, and see what guesses I can make and what information can be found. So, for once, I'm going to be covering this in the way I usually do, analysing each video for what we see and then trying to pull together some theories at the end. Not the way I usually cover Harmony and Horror, but then my previous videos were done after Season 1 had concluded, so it was easier to cover big, overarching topics as opposed to now with just the 2 new canon ones to draw from. Let's see what new information we can gain, how the story is continued, and maybe if there's a theme to this season. As always, here's your warning that I am covering analog horror. All these videos are full of terrors, but the second main video in particular gets kind of heavy towards the end. Remember to keep yourself safe, and if you don't think you're in the right place to handle it, maybe wait until you feel up to it. Or maybe you're here watching my video to act as a halfway point to seeing the whole thing, in which case I hope I can do a good job of easing you in. Let's get started. The first of the 2 main Season 2 videos is one centred around magical Sofia, who seems to be an updated version of the Sofia marionette we saw constantly during Season 1. The one who is known to contain Martin Greywinder's daughter, Macy. The videotape starts with a blue screen as the videotape begins to play, then a series of numbers and letters flashes quickly across the screen. This is actually hex code, and slowing it down and putting it through a translator gets us this message.
Hello, my name is Detective Stewart. If you have decoded this, then you are exactly the kind of person I'm looking for. I am working on a case that I have been ordered to stay out of. There is so much going on, but I'm only focused on one thing. Where is the Greywinder family? I have a lead from various VHS tapes found in the Greywinder home. It's all very difficult to understand, but with your help, we can bring this case to a close.
Stewart is the name of the officer we heard interviewing Martin Greywinder about his intern Amy Wilson in Rebirth, with a conversation that suggested that Stewart and Martin had previously had other interviews to do with other occurrences, one involving Martin's son Thomas, another about something that happened with a television show M&A Harmony were putting out known as the Harmony Broadcast Incident. This means that Detective Stewart has been investigating all of the strange incidents around Martin and his toys since before Martin vanished, and now we learn he's been told to stay out of the case, yet continues to pursue the truth secretly. The video then continues with footage of Martin setting up the camera in Macy's room that we've seen before in She Can't Sleep, the one that will eventually capture the sounds of Gloria's death as Macy listens. Macy asks when she'll get a toy, then why her dad is installing a camera in her room. Martin simply says that he's going to be away for a few days, and the camera is so he can keep track of everyone and make sure they're safe, that he'll always be here with the cameras to protect them from the monster in the closet. When Maisie asks to come to work with him, Martin quickly says no and tells the girl that she can't come. They both say they'll miss each other, and then Martin takes Macy to get ready for bed. The screen fades out, then back in on a white background, and the words Harmony Toys appears in a logo of red and yellow lettering with a jingle. We then see a tall, lanky doll standing in a room, coloured balloons behind her, and with a number of masks on the wall to the right. One of those masks looks to be that of the clown, and I think one of the others is related to the Stitch Body. Another one could maybe be the dragon character who we've still yet to see more of. The camera zooms in on this doll, and we can see that it's clearly a different type of Sofia, as well as bearing a resemblance to the dolls we saw in the security footage partway through My Two Front Teeth, although the faces look slightly different. That could just be because the security footage is in black and white though, or that the shadows we see here shape the face slightly differently. The camera stops close to the doll's face, and she turns slowly to face the camera before the narrator starts to speak. We're told that this is Magical Sofia, which suggests that this is an updated version of the Sofia the Singing Marionette we've seen before. The narrator starts advertising her features, with the introduction skipping a little. We see Magical Sofia up close as we're told that her green eyes will watch you, and we see the eyes moving to follow some stomping footsteps off camera. The camera then changes to one of a full-bodied doll in a purple room, as she moves to dance in demonstration of that feature, and we're told that she can hear music up to 10 feet away. The doll turns to look at the camera once more before it again changes to a shot focused on the head, but slightly blurry as we're told Magical Sofia can sing. But the narration is interrupted by a loud buzzing as the footage garbles slightly. The image is overlaid with a black screen with a set of red lines travelling across the picture, still showing the doll picture underneath. We then see text on screen which seems to be a conversation between a girl and her mother. The mother asks if the girl made any friends, and the girl tells her mother about a girl she met called Sofia, someone made of plastic who was alone just like her. She says that Sofia had said she would be the girl's friend if the girl took her home with her. The girl then begs for Sofia to come home and promises to look after the doll. We then get to a part of the promotion in which we are supposedly going to hear children's reviews on the Magical Sofia toy. The first image that pops up is of a girl with big wide eyes, and immediately we can tell that she's terrified as she is sobbing. Turning on the subtitles gives her name as Marilyn Taylor. She repeats that she likes the toy and that it makes her happy, and under the photo appears the words "Happy New Friend." Marilyn then begins pleading and promises not to run away again, asking someone to fix her legs. We then hear an inhuman screeching from something that the subtitles call UFO, and the sound cuts off and Marilyn's image vanishes off screen. A new photo appears, a boy that the subtitles name Earl McLean, his image distorted into an unreal smile. He too is crying as he chokes out that his new toy always makes him happy. As he says he loves the toy, the words "Happy New Friend" appears under his image again. He then says the toy makes him happy, and the screen goes black and the word "happy" repeats a number of times before stuttering out. We then see the face of a Magical Sofia lit only from below in blue standing next to an open door. The subtitles name it as MS Recall number 12. We can see that it is twitching, and in a deep stuttering voice it says that its name is Sofia and asks if you want to play a game. It then stops twitching and stands still for a few seconds before rushing the camera, causing it to glitch out with the doll's face on screen. The footage then cuts back to the review section with another girl's photo on screen, with the photo also slightly distorted and stretched. The subtitles identify the girl as Jennifer Laker, and we hear her scream and then hear some loud banging, during which the "Happy New Friend" words appear under the photo as it did with the others. We then hear what sounds like something being broken through, and again we hear something from UFO, this time growling, although I also hear a creaking which reminds me of the sound we hear when either Sofia or the ice cream man open their jaws. The video then goes back to the Magical Sofia ad, this time seemingly at the end. The doll is tucked up in a bed, looking at the screen with Magical Sofia on the screen to the bottom right. The narrator says that Magical Sofia can't wait to go on adventures with you, then says goodnight to her and the light switches off, leaving only the doll's large green eyes alight, still looking at the camera in the white noise silence. We then get a quick on-screen flash of details for the original Sofia doll, with instructions on the right hand side of the screen. The doll's face is covered with a black bar, and part of the instructions asks the parents not to interrupt the toy when it is singing to a child. Underneath the image of the Sofia is a series of what I thought was more hex code, but doesn't seem to translate. As I've said before, codes are a bit of a weaker area for me, so if anyone knows, comment and I'll add it to a pinned comment. I'm also pretty sure the screen has appeared in a previous video, but again I'm unable to find it, so comment if you know and I'll get it added to the pinned comment. We then get to see a bit of footage that seems like the in-between part that should have been part of this sequence here in She Can't Sleep, as we see the original Sofia's mouth open up to show off eyes and mouth in shadows from inside the doll. We then see a shot of the original Sofia surrounded by candles on both sides, as the camera zooms in on the face to show the doll with her big wide eye sockets and missing mouth plates that fully expose her teeth. Then it shows us footage of the organ character who first appeared in My Two Front Teeth and seems to have the name Morgan, at least on the Harmony and Horror Discord. It then cuts to what seems to be security camera footage of a bunch of storage lockers taken at 1:10 in the morning. We see the original Sofia appear from around a corner, leaping up to the ceiling and scuttling around the walls. She climbs back down to the floor and checks along the closed locker doors, seemingly peering underneath a few and checking them before scuttling off camera. We then see another security camera point of view as she comes around another corner and begins to check another row of doors. She then seems to find the one she is looking for, backs up onto the opposite wall and throws herself bodily at the locked door. She bounces off once and backs up again, and just before she throws herself again we have a camera switch to a dim screen as we hear her hit again. Suddenly there is light from the bottom of the screen and we realise that this is a camera view of inside the storage locker as we see the original Sofia lifting up the door to clamber inside. To the sides of the image are what appears to be the pigtails of the magical Sofia dolls we've just seen. Sofia peeks in before scuttling in under the door and coming into the light right in front of the camera, big wide eyes and mouth plates missing. Up close we can see that her doll body is dirty and splashed with red, especially in the slit down her forehead, and we can very clearly see the cursed flesh in the mouth area. She tilts her head, working her unique jaw configuration, and repeats the words of the magical Sofia from earlier, stating her name and asking if you want to play a game, but in a voice that sounds much more childlike. The subtitles, if turned on, call this doll MS Recall Number 5. She then starts to tremble and her head begins to open, along the jaw as we've seen previously, but also from the slit on the forehead, splitting her head in two with a loud creaking noise as the footage distorts and glitches out with a scream-like noise. Inside both openings we can again see the cursed flesh shining wetly. The image then comes back with the Sofia doll lying limply at the bottom of the screen, her eye sockets and mouth empty as we see another cursed flesh creature rise from behind the shell, the head roughly in the shape of Sofia's. It stands there for a while until it begins to crack open its jaw in exactly the same way as Sofia, leaving us with no doubt that this is the cursed flesh from inside of the Sofia doll. This video begins with what appears to be a screen for a company called Vision Echo, with a logo that resembles the top of a man's head from the nose bridge up in black and white with staring eyes, with a mostly black background of two red grids coming towards the screen. We then see the scene of a car on a forest road. It starts up, the headlights go on, and we see that this appears to be the title screen for a game called Memory Lane. The soundtrack over the screen is a somewhat discordant little piece as we see options appear for New Game, Load Game and Quit Game. The selected text goes all the way down to Quit and rest there briefly, then up to Load and also rest there for a second or two before going to New, which is selected. The screen fades to black and then shows a loading screen which is a clown's face rotating. We are then in the front seat of a car looking out at a road in the middle of a forest with the dark sky. We hear a simple little intense track, then notice a figure approaching on the left hand side of the road. This figure is dressed all in black with a white shirt and tie and seems to be dragging two things behind them. They also have a pale or maybe white painted face. When it gets close enough it stops and faces the screen, dropping what it is dragging, and the track begins to skip as upside down words flash above him. Stay away from this man. He then disappears and the music stops, then there is a second long blast of the intense track and white hands with red stains appear on the wheel and the face of a clown appears in the rearview mirror. There is then a much more jovial tune as the car starts up and so does the game as the car starts moving down the road. At the top of the screen is now a gas meter which slowly goes down as the car moves forward, sometimes speeding up and using more fuel as it does so. At first the game goes as you'd expect. Cans of fuel appear and the player has to drive through them to pick them up on top of the gas meter on top. Eventually though there is a different pickup, one that appears to be a tape, and picking it up stops the music and plays a conversation, although the game footage continues uneventfully underneath. It is between local business owner Franklin Norway and an officer who appears to be Detective Stewart again. They have a fairly jovial conversation at first, although Norway does ask about curfews being set up, and eventually the officer discovers that Franklin Norway had been making arcade games himself. Clown Slasher, Haunted Dolls, Killer Dragon, The Puppet Maker, clowns, all on a certain topic. Norway at first says they're for a good scare, but when the officer comments he's glad to see Frank is keeping up with the latest news because the clowns look like the ones they're after, Norway confesses he did it to keep kids away from a certain shop. The parents thought he was overreacting, so he had to scare the kids to keep them safe. The officer then asks Frank what he knows about what was actually happening in that store. The conversation stops and the game music comes back and the game continues as normal for a bit, bar one little note repeat. However, after about 25 seconds, things change. The clown face in the mirror suddenly gets much closer and looks directly ahead, the gas meter is empty and flashing, and the music gets seriously slowed down. The car continues ahead, but suddenly a horned figure appears in front of the car, making the music stutter, which the player swerves to avoid, and the music returns back to its slowed down state. The car continues on for a bit more before the music suddenly becomes very low pitched, almost as if all the higher pitched sounds were switched off, then it starts skipping. The road ahead begins flashing and the stuttering track is replaced by another similar to the original intense track, as we begin to see the horned figure appearing all over the road in front, with some poses making it seem like they are leaning down. This continues on until the same figure leans in from the right hand side of the screen, so close as to seem like they're in the car too. It then quickly ducks back out as something blue appears in the road, and the clip ends by focusing closely on the creature, which resembles the Stitch body. We then get a series of disturbing reddened images of the Stitch body with creepy audio playing, focusing first on the entire toy, then its head, its chest and its feet. Then we see the Stitch body laid back in the spotlight, its workings exposed from a hole in its stomach, and this image becomes overlaid with another face. Then the creepy audio is replaced by a drone which sounds like a lost signal, as we see a sequence of faces that start as clown but morph into a regular face that shows a wide-eyed, mostly neutral but slightly surprised look and freezes the screen. We then see the white screen is the red and yellow Harmony Toys logo that we saw in the previous video too. We then get another toy advert which starts with two small figures trying to work out the origin of what they're hearing. Both of these figures are constructed from shapes with paper plate faces, and one of them quite obviously resembles the toy maker from the Are You Happy and What Went Wrong videos. It's eventually revealed that the origin of the voice is the new version of Stitch Buddy, the Fuzzy Buddy. The narration starts up telling us that the Fuzzy Buddy is your new best friend, and a full-body Fuzzy Buddy is put on screen with a cross-section of its robotics. The narrator begins to list off its features as it did with Magical Sofia. We're told that Fuzzy Buddy can talk and loves to chat, but the ad then cuts to footage from inside a room. The camera moves to show a Fuzzy Buddy sitting on a chest of drawers in a child's room. The Fuzzy Buddy laughs, then howls, and we can see that one of its eyes appears to be halfway stuck. It then says hello, and its eyes seem to reset to both be fully working again. It says you're too scary, then puts its ears back and shakes its head with a little no, you're too loud. Then sets its ears back up with a bye bye. It then laughs again, and then its eyes snap towards the camera but still focus a little behind it. It slightly turns its head and begins to ask why so sad over and over, its head turning more and more to face the camera, as we see a shadow loom on the curtain to the right of the room. The footage cuts out, and in the darkness we hear Fuzzy Buddy say, "All doggies go to heaven," and then the toy leaps at the screen with a scream, causing the footage to glitch. Back to the advert, and the next feature of Fuzzy Buddy we're told about is that this toy can apparently really eat, just like a real dog would. The full-bodied shot of Fuzzy Buddy is replaced by one of it sitting like an actual dog, and the narrator's voiceover is now higher pitched. However, the advert is once again interrupted by footage, this time with the camera lying slightly crookedly on the floor, with the Fuzzy Buddy sitting on the right and a ball to its left. The toy is sat in a pool of blood, chewing on something we can't see because its snout is in shadow, with blood also dripping from that area down the top of its chest. We hear something that sounds like a child screaming off camera, and the Fuzzy Buddy just says that whatever it's bitten is tasty. Back to the advert, and the next feature says that Fuzzy Buddy can dance to whatever music you put on for it, and the sitting Fuzzy Buddy changes to one sat begging. We then get footage from a handheld camera at 1:44 AM of someone in a corridor with a flashlight, with something playing Beethoven's Fur-Elise in the background over and over. We hear the Fuzzy Buddy before we get to see it, as its voice echoes down the hall and we hear it scampering around as the light is turned away from the corridor. It eventually appears in the light, dancing. The person holding the light and camera proceeds to essentially play red light green light with the toy until it's close enough and the toy seems to malfunction and shut down. The person with the camera stops playing music and approaches the robotic dog, who we can tell now must be the size of a small child. Once the camera gets close, Fuzzy Buddy twitches, looks up and attacks the camera. We're then back to the advert for the final feature, as we're told to make bedtime less scary, Fuzzy Buddy's eye will watch all night long, and the begging Fuzzy Buddy switches to Wad stood up making a cute roaring pose. Then the end bit of the ad begins to loop, repeating all night long, until they start stuttering and the watching eyes stop looking and stare at the screen, with the posing Fuzzy Buddy slowly moving from its pose to stare at the screen too. Then a series of images flash across the screen, including this one that seems to be of a child poking out of the stomach of a Fuzzy Buddy. One of what might be either Stitch or Fuzzy Buddy. One of Stitch Buddy's face with something fleshy at the bottom of his jaw. One of a news article with inverted colours and backwards that when we reinvert and flip the other way it's a local newspaper warning about a killer clown wanted for murder with an image of the clown. An upside down image of what looks like a factory. One of the Fuzzy Buddies snarling at camera with glowing robotic eyes. The paper plate face of the new toy maker. The organ again with some background that makes it look like it might be located somewhere this time. The larger Stitch Buddy form's face staring at the camera. Another upside down image, this time of the clown's Jack-in-the-Box. A few shots of a Fuzzy Buddy sat watching a screen in a living room. And finally a very whited out image of Fuzzy Buddy's head with realistic looking eyes. During this, the watching eyes switch out to what appears to be those same realistic looking eyes, and in the final shots of it on screen when the colours are back to normal, the eyes have gone from yellow to a deep brown. The video is dark for a bit, then resumes in the living room we saw in the images, as the Fuzzy Buddy watches the television as someone records it from just outside the room. The screen shows what appears to be the start of a Harmony Toys advert, but it quickly garbles and glitches into a mess of images of the Stitch Buddy in both forms as some disconcerting music plays and what sounds like a strangled voice trying to talk but glitching or scrambled over it. Eventually another face fades over the top of the Stitch Buddy images, that of the baby doll. The Fuzzy Buddy's head turns towards the camera and after a pause its eyes switch out to the glowing robotic ones we saw in an image and it leaps towards the screen, but there is a loud shot and the robot hit from the side, sending it flying off screen to the left. The camera turns to follow it, and it lies on the floor, letting out a laugh before powering down, one eye now lying completely separate from the rest of the toy beside it. The camera turns back to see a man in the shadows of the door to the right of the television screen, as the man, Detective Stewart, asks if the kid is alright and introduces himself, saying he's there to take them somewhere safe. On the screen we can now see the words, "Where's my dog?" We then see what appears to be more footage from inside the same place as the dancing Fuzzy Buddy in the corridor earlier, although this camera is marked Cam 4 instead of Cam 1 as that footage had been, and is slightly further into the early morning at 2:18 AM. We hear a slow version of Incy Wincy Spider as the camera looks around the ceiling around them. As three puppets, two of them the paper plate face shaped dolls from the start of the Fuzzy Buddy advert, crawl across the walls around the person holding the camera. As they look up into the rotating face of the new Toy Maker doll, the advert stutters back in with the end of the advert, showing us a boxed Fuzzy Buddy and the narrator's voice back at its regular tone. We hear that they are available in Harmony toy stores and are currently under a buy one get one free offer, with the first 10 also coming with a special Harmony sing-along tape. We see a tape with "Play Me" written on it. The ad ends with the narrator saying, "Don't be late." The screen gets dark, then starts another scene, focusing in on a figure lying on its back in the middle of a spotlight, the baby doll with its whole unbroken mask as a haunting sad tune plays. The baby doll sits up in the foreground as we see another spotlight a short distance away, with the Stitch Buddy lying in it on its front. The focus of the scene shifts to the baby doll as it turns and sees the other spotlighted figure and turns itself over into a crawling position. We then get to see a closer up shot of the Stitch Buddy as it raises its head slightly, and we can see from this position that it is broken. One hand is missing entirely and we can see the wet looking cursed flesh inside poking through. We see the baby doll crawling forward and more lights turn on to connect the path between the two as it resolutely crawls forward towards Stitch Buddy. We get another look at the Stitch Buddy from the front and can now see that as well as the missing hand, it also seems to now be missing both eyes and its body language is tired, as he lets out a bark towards the baby doll before flopping back down to the floor in an exhausted heap. The baby doll stops crawling and gets unsteadily to its feet, posed as if walking upright is still unfamiliar to it. We get to see it walking forward a little bit of the way, the camera behind the Stitch Buddy, so we can see that the dog toy is lying in another bloody pool. Eventually the baby doll falls forward, its head hitting the ground with a noise before it sits back up, with its head now sporting the large wound we've seen it with before. It puts a hand to its head and we hear a baby crying, for it puts both hands to its face to weep and then reaches them both towards the Stitch Buddy. The Stitch Buddy then begins to drag itself along towards the crying baby doll slowly, who also resumes crawling towards the dog as it sees this. We then get a shot that shows the two crawling towards each other, with each taking up half the shot, showing off saddened eyes. The Stitch Buddy gets to a point where it runs out of energy again, reaching for the baby doll before flopping back down to the floor. We then see spoken words on screen, seemingly from Banzo, as he confesses that he doesn't know Ava that well, but knows that she feeds him treats, pets him, loved him. He then apologises to her as we see the crawling, sad baby doll appear over the shot of the exhausted, broken Stitch Buddy. We see the baby doll finally reach the dog toy and the shot slows, and the screen goes white, then black. We are then presented with another choice, free or rebirth. The video ends with the credits, crediting the voice actors, animators and sound people. Then after the credits we get a few seconds of a teaser. It looks like Henry might be the next toy to receive a remade version in the next video. As I said in the intro, there are unlisted videos for this season of Harmony and Horror 2 hidden in the descriptions of the main videos. We'll go in order, but mainly it is only one of those videos that gives us a substantial something to talk about, so I might be covering that one more extensively than the others. The first unlisted video is linked to Happy New Friends and is called Laughing Makes Me Happy. The video is a series of partially lit magical Sofia faces who are laughing, and every few seconds another one gets added, also laughing. Eventually, the video shows just the one face, no laughter, as a grinding noise plays and the face of the doll warps. The second unlisted video is one of the two choices, free. The video is a continuation of the final scene of The Perfect Pet, and we see the baby doll and Stitch Buddy collapsed on their fronts on the floor, just about touching. Over the scene plays a slow, soft rendition of Rockabye Baby. We can also better see now with the angle and lighting that Stitch Buddy's stomach appears to be damaged, which makes me recall that one image of Stitch Buddy with his chest opened we saw just after the driving game portion of The Perfect Pet. On screen we see a short exchange between Banzo and Ava, blue text for the dog and pink for the baby. We see Banzo once again apologising to Ava for what happened, saying that he knows it hurts, asks her not to cry and then tells her it's okay to just let go, that he will take her to her mama. Then we see two wispy white orbs rise from the two toy bodies and shoot off upwards out of sight as the music concludes and the screen lingers on the toys, slowly fading out. The final unlisted video is the other choice, Rebirth. This video is a longer one that follows two police officers as they conduct a search around the Grey Winder house, with footage shown from a number of different cameras set up around the house as well as the POVs of the two police officers involved. We know that this must be the Grey Winder house because one of the first shots we see is a camera in the corner of Macy's room. We see first her room, then a corridor, the top of the stairs, then footage from inside what must be a living room as we hear knocking on the door and a voice telling us it's the police and ordering whoever is inside to open up, that they know that they are in there. When there is no answer, he threatens to kick the door down, and eventually the order is given to do just that. The camera distorts slightly, and when it clears there are now two uniformed officers in the living room. The officer we've heard speaking before orders whoever they are looking for to come out with their hands up, then tells the other officer that he'll search the ground floor while the other man checks upstairs. The other officer seems reluctant to split up, wanting to wait for their backup, but the first officer orders the lieutenant to just do as he asks, saying that this is why he joined the force. The other man asks what to do if he's backed into a corner, and the first officer replies in exasperation that there's two of them and one of the person they're looking for. If he gets into trouble, he should just shout for help. Their backup will be there shortly, but that standing there is just wasting time. We then briefly see the lieutenant's point of view as he prepares to go upstairs, and in the camera at the top of the stairs we see his flashlight beam crossing the bottom of the stairs. Back to the lieutenant's point of view, and he tries calling out for the person to come out, but then something runs across his beam on all fours and up the stairs as we return to the stairs camera and see it streak past. The lieutenant startles back at this and then tries calling for the other man, Officer Jameson. Getting no reply, he curses softly a few times and tells himself he can do this, and then starts heading towards the stairs to investigate. We then get a short clip from Jameson's point of view as he checks the bathroom, calling out "hello", then seeing a small high-up window which is open. We then see the camera in the corridor, then back to the lieutenant, who is now in what we can assume is the same corridor. He shines his light about, calling for Mr. Greywinder, telling us that, as we could have guessed, the police are here for Martin. We go back to Jameson as he walks towards the door, muttering that he's sure that Martin isn't here, but then he gets distracted as a radio on a nearby bookcase turns on and starts playing a fuzzy, half-tuned version of Daisy Bell to his confusion. It eventually stops, and he turns back to the door he was heading towards, and we can faintly hear Pop Goes the Weasel playing. Back to the stairs camera, and we suddenly see two shapes come into view at the bottom, one blue ear and one pink, before they duck back out of sight. Back to the lieutenant, and he reaches the door and mutters that he hopes they're not in here, before shouting that he's coming in and kicking it. Suddenly he hears organ music playing and looks down the corridor to where it's coming from in confusion. Back to Jameson, and he opens the door, revealing a set of stairs going downwards, heading towards a basement. He shines his light down to the bottom, only to see a patch of red and curses at the sight. Back to the lieutenant, and he is now heading towards the source of the organ music he's hearing. He finds an open door and sees the organ playing in a room. A shot of Jameson as he reaches a red door downstairs and wonders what Martin had been doing. And then we get a shot of Matey's room again, but this time the vent cover is hanging off the wall by a single screw and is swinging, indicating it's only recently been removed. Back to the lieutenant's view, and as he comes further around the door we can see some familiar furniture. The organ is in Matey's room. Back to Jameson as he opens the red door, only to find the room with the clown's jack-in-the-box, which seems to be where the music is coming from. Back to the lieutenant, and he is suddenly startled as a ringing alarm clock is dropped from above the doorframe to the floor in front of him. He looks down at it, then looks back up, only to find a tall, thin figure with a white face, blue and pink animal ears, and wide staring eyes standing there. We hear the lieutenant begin to gasp, then we're back to Jameson as we hear the lieutenant scream in the distance. Jameson turns and we finally learn that the lieutenant's name is Jeremy, before we go back to Jeremy's point of view as he tries to back away from the thing, calling for Jameson before it charges him. Then we're back to Jameson as he comes running into the living room, calling for Jeremy, searching around, until his beam also falls onto the tall thing. Jameson is braver than Jeremy, ordering it to freeze, but the thing's head begins to rotate a full 180 degrees, revealing the Stitch Buddy head on the back. Then, as Jameson too begins to back away, it charges him with a dog's face snarling, and the final shots of this video are just the Stitch Buddy's snarling face up close as Jameson's last "no" stutters and skips. In these two videos we get to see a continuation of the story started by Harmony and Horror's first season. And while 2 videos, plus the 3 extra, might not be a lot, putting it together with what's come before has given me a few ideas of what to theorise about. Firstly, we have Detective Stewart. This man was introduced in a previous video but seems to be playing a much larger role already in the second season. His is the message that starts off happy new friends, and he also shows up in person to save the person behind the camera who is spying on the fuzzy buddy watching the screen. We learn that Stewart has been going around asking questions about Martin Greywinder and what went on in the shop, even though he's been ordered to stay out of it. But why? I have an idea, even though right now it's just some loose theory with little to support it. But I'm wondering if the reason Detective Stewart was asked to stay out of this case is because at some point, some part of it became personal for him. The interview we hear in Rebirth, again the previous one, not the current one we're talking about in this video, makes mention of Stewart having a son who loves Martin's toys and his TV show. Could it be that the young Stewart became a victim of Martin Greywinder's toys, and the police force took Detective Stewart off the case because of it? He'd also explain why Stewart is still going so hard to try and find out what happened. He wants justice for his son. Or alternatively, maybe the detective just became too obsessed with the case and was told to lay off it. Maybe it has nothing to do with his son at all. I did say this one had little to support it right now. We also see a few things during the course of the videos that I feel might be important to discuss. The first is that the name of the toy company is no longer M&A Harmony Toys as it was during Season 1, but simply Harmony Toys. There are many different reasons of why this could have happened. It could be that the company continues to run without Martin and they remove the M&A because the brothers of Martin and Arthur were no longer around. Or it could be that Martin is still involved, but the name was changed in an attempt to disconnect themselves from the past negative press. At the moment, this detail is still small and without context, though if Martin is no longer involved because he's on the run and the toys are still a danger, this would suggest that the company has more dangerous individuals within it than just Martin Greywinder. Secondly, we have the part of the video where we see text of a conversation between a mother and her daughter, in which the daughter talks about making friends with a doll called Sofia and begs to bring her home. To me, this tells us how this particular toy, Magical Sofia, is hunting for children, targeting children who are alone and befriending them, getting into their homes and then either attacking or abducting them for whatever purpose Martin or whoever is in charge now has for them. Speaking of which, the review section of Happy New Friends, which is presented to just be a bunch of kids who have been forced into saying they love the toy, has some elements to it that makes me wonder if what we're hearing is also something else entirely. As part of Marilyn's review, she promises not to run away if someone fixes her legs. Looking at the photo, I can't help but think she's old enough to realise that her legs can't just be fixed if they're broken. Unless, of course, they're the sort of legs that can easily be fixed now. This entire series is about people being made into toys, so is it a far stretch to think that these reviews are some sort of conditioning process for those kids who are now living a new life inside of the shells of the toys Harmony Toys are making? We then have the original Sofia hunting down a storage locker which looks to be full of these magical Sofia dolls. And despite it being another loose theory, I do wonder if maybe she's tracking them down because they are in part her. To go back to My Two Front Teeth, there was a part I didn't comment much on at the time, and it's this scene of the original Sofia strapped to a table thrashing and screaming. We know that the insides of these toys are filled with what I've been calling cursed flesh, and that it can be possibly combined into bigger beings made of this flesh, a theory that gets reinforced in the Rebirth video of Season 2. But now I'm wondering if maybe cursed flesh can be separated into smaller pieces. Unlike the originals, we don't see any flesh on the insides of Magical Sofia or the Fuzzy Buddy, but maybe this is because they contain less than the originals. We also see Stitch Buddy torn apart from the stomach during The Perfect Pet, and indeed have seen his larger form slumped over with a hole straight through him in the same area, which could support this theory of mine that the original toys have had some of their cursed flesh extracted and placed within these newer, updated versions to allow them to carry out their master's twisted plans, whatever they may be. And if those who share the same cursed flesh are able to track each other too, this could explain how the puppeteer, a being seemingly made from many Henry dolls, is able to trace new Henrys to add to itself. And just a small thing, but the way we see the cursed flesh escaping from Sofia, the original one, makes me think back to the 50k special and the after photo we saw of the characters. In that photo, Sofia had no head, and here we see her splitting open her head to get out. It makes me wonder if some of the other fates we see in the after photo can be interpreted to show us how each creature escapes or is somehow extracted, or possibly meets their fate. Moving across to the Perfect Pet proper, we get to see a driving game, and I feel like what we're seeing, at least partially, is a representation of Marty's head and thoughts as he killed Banzo. Starting from the point when the horned figure appeared on the road, I feel like what we're watching is Martin maybe having some last minute hesitation about doing what he was going to do to Banzo after making the deal. He swerves the figure, tries to avoid its influence, but it begins to appear all over the road, all over the place, mocking him for thinking he can avoid the horned figure. Eventually it is seated beside Martin, distracting him and letting him know that Martin cannot escape him. Then it vanishes and Banzo is ahead of the car. It is too late now to turn back. We can see from the bit of clip located in Macy's room in Happy New Friends that while Martin was work obsessed and didn't want disturbances, he did at least love his family before all of the murders happened. It's not too far a leap to think he could have had some brief second thoughts about murdering the family dog. We also get to see a number of interesting things during The Perfect Pet, and I'd like to focus on these two bits together because I think they both tell the story of the same thing. The first is the eating clip where we see a Fuzzy Buddy covered in blood chewing something, and this one image here where we see a Fuzzy Buddy with a child's head sticking out of it. Both of these, I feel, are put into context with the third clip taken from another video on Battington's channel, Fuzzy Buddy Test. The description says it's just part of the first animation test of Fuzzy Buddy, but as we watch we see the toy's eyes turn into the glowing ones and then his front opens up and snaps shut. And this, I think, is what we see during the eating clip and the image of the child sticking out of Fuzzy Buddy. We know that the fuzzy body is roughly the size of a small child, and I feel like it uses this opening to contain children it targets, only as seen in the eating clip, it sometimes doesn't quite succeed in doing so. Finally, I wish to talk about Stitch Buddy, the baby doll, and what I've been told is named Alpha. Probably. I'll call it the amalgamation though until that name is confirmed somewhere. I know it was used in a community post, but it wasn't definitely applied to the creation. I feel that out of the two endings we see for The Perfect Pet, 3 is unfortunately not the one that is canon. However, it does bring up an interesting question. I've previously theorised that cursed flesh was used to bind souls to the material realm and stop them ascending, but here we can see 2 characters doing just that. This makes me wonder if cursed flesh has a limit, it can be broken or damaged or exhausted enough to no longer be able to hold souls. If this is the case, can all of the creatures Martin has made be set free eventually? Or is it only the ones made from a literal baby and a dog, souls who are potentially purer, who have this chance to escape? Rebirth though seems another cruel experiment, and I feel like the amalgamation was made before Martin went on the run to act as a guard dog of sorts. I think that he chose the baby doll and the Stitch Buddy because one was mostly useless, being made from a baby, and the other had betrayed him, because I still believe Banzo canonically refused to kill Ava and was forced to by Martin. We know that Banzo was used to kill Ava as we see him apologising to her in the video, and given his state I do feel that, while some damage might have been caused by having cursed flesh extracted, my theory on Martin attacking or breaking the Stitch Buddy for refusing to obey commands is being supported here. Merging these two together seems to have created a much taller creature than either of the two, and because of this, even combined their shells aren't enough to cover all of the flesh inside. But if the investigation we see being conducted is the same one we hear about in Local 13, where the police found bodies, what then happened to the amalgamation after it killed Jameson and Jeremy? Where did it go? And did it just leave the 2 men's bodies to be found where it killed them, or were they put in with the bodies found later? We also get to see the organ multiple times during the video, and it makes me wonder what part it has to play in all this. Is it at the fun fair attraction that so many people think is coming up? Is it a source of the demonic song that people think is attached to the Harmony broadcast incident? Or is it important in some other way we don't yet know about? So many questions we've been left with as a result of just 2 main videos and a few extras too. We're only a little way into Harmony and Horror's 2nd season, and with that stinger I think we're due to get one on Henry next, and maybe whatever improved version he will be getting. I think I've managed to piece together some of what's going on here, but as always, I'm cautious to guess too far without more clues and more context. However, already there does seem to be a theme or 2 emerging. Firstly, we have the next stage of the toy company with the upgraded toys, and then possibly attempting to distance themselves from past negative press they've gained. However, we also see what appears to be a focus on how these toys are hunting down prey. We get clues with both Magical Sofia and the Fuzzy Buddy after all. If last season was about how Martin murdered his own family, maybe season 2 is more focused on how Martin got victims outside of those close to him. While we wait for the next instalment and Battington teases us with news of episode 3, I hope I've given you plenty to think about.